Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah Nama Pankajanaabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangrahe. So today we are going to be reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text 18. Evam chatasmin naradeva deve prayopavishte divideva sangaha prashasya bhumau vyakiran prasune mura muhurdundubhayasya nedhu. I'll repeat. You can also say along with me. Evam chatasmin naradeva deve prayopavishte divideva sangaha prashyasya bhumau vyakiran prasune mura muhurdundubhayasya nedhu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Thus the king, Maharaj Parikshit, sat to fast until death. All the demigods of the higher planets praised the king's actions, and in pleasure continually scattered flowers over the earth and beat celestial drums. Purport. Even up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, there were interplanetary communications, and the news of Maharaj Parikshit's fasting unto death to attain salvation reached the higher planets in the sky where the intelligent demigods live. The demigods are more luxurious than human beings, but all of them are obedient to the orders of the Supreme Lord. There is no one in the heavenly planets who is an atheist or non-believer. Thus, any devotee of the Lord on the surface of the earth is always praised by them. And in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, they were greatly delighted and thus gave tokens of honor by scattering flowers over the earth and by beating celestial drums. A demigod takes pleasure in seeing someone go back to Godhead. He is always pleased with a devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his adidaivic powers, he may help the devotees in all respects. And by their actions, the Lord is pleased with them. There's an invisible chain of complete cooperation between the Lord, the demigods, and the devotees of the Lord on earth. Om Jnanatmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhuta Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Tam Tam Saji Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Papanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam discussion. I am not very qualified. However, as instructed, I'm taking this opportunity to glorify Bhagavatam within my meager capacity. And for my purification, I seek the blessings of my Guru Maharaj and all the assembled devotees so that I may speak of something of some value. So coming back to the translation, says, thus the king Maharaj Parikshit sat to fast until death. All the demigods of the higher planets praised the king's actions, and in pleasure continually scattered flowers over the earth and beat celestial drums. So we've been hearing about all the incidents that led up to this, right? So now at this point, Maharaj sat down firmly with determination to fast until death for the final 7 days of his life. And he's doing this to completely detach himself from the bodily platform and fix his mind on Krishna. He's already given up his kingdom and all his family attachments. So I was thinking, what are some of the contemporary situations where people have voluntarily fasted to do something like this? And of course, none other than our own Prabhupada comes to mind. In fact, in Bhakti Charu Maharaj's Ocean of Mercy, his book, Ocean of Mercy, in the section when Maharaj was Prabhupada's personal servant, and Prabhupada told Maharaj not to cook for him anymore. So I'm going to read a little bit from there. So this is the time when Prabhupada returns to Vrindavan and announces, everybody is very happy that Prabhupada has returned to Vrindavan, has come to Vrindavan. Everybody in Vrindavan is really happy. But then he announces why he has come there, which is to leave his body. And he very compassionately explains to the devotees that, given the whole the concept of body and soul, right? He will not always be there in his vapu, his physical form, but he would always be there in his vani form through his books and his spoken instructions, etc. So Maharaj is writing, despite Srila Prabhupada's eloquent explanation, when the devotees filed out of the room, they were still shocked and disheartened. After they left, Prabhupada told me, from now on, don't cook anything for me and don't force me to eat anything. What is the use of eating when there is no appetite? His words sounded like an ultimate. He was going to stop eating and drinking in order to give up his body. Just as Maharaj Parikshit had done, he learned that he had only a week to live. I went to Tamal Krishna Maharaj and related what Srila Prabhupada had told me. His divine grace is engaging in prayopavesha, I said, when one decides to give up his body by not eating or drinking. Maharaj remained silent for several minutes. Then he said, what can we do when Srila Prabhupada makes such decisions and gives us such an order? So Maharaj goes on to write that although Prabhupada had asked me not to cook or force him to eat anything, I made fruit juice and kept it on a table next to his bed, just in case he wanted something to drink. But the juice remained untouched. And for the next few days, he stayed in bed, hardly speaking. It's very heartbreaking, isn't it? To think that your spiritual shelter, your spiritual master is fasting to his end. But that's how resolute Prabhupada was. And I've also heard about Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, that during his last days, when he was in a lot of pain because of all he had several cancerous tumors in different parts of his body. It was very painful. He was not able to eat anything. He was completely emaciated. However, he was completely radiant and always continually sharing Krishna consciousness with everybody that came to visit him. So demonstrating, even in the modern times, we have these examples demonstrating that was completely above the bodily platform, transcendence, really. Another example that comes to mind, which is not spoken that much, is Vishnu Priya. He's the second consort of Mahaprabhu. And she's the second consort of Mahaprabhu. She was very young when Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas, but she was completely devoted. She got a deity form made of Mahaprabhu, and all day long she was, chanting and crying. And with every Mahamantra she chanted, she kept one grain of rice. She set aside one grain of rice with every Mahamantra she chanted. And at the end of the day, she collected whatever she had put aside with her Mahamantra, and she cooked just that much, offered to Mahaprabhu, and ate as prasad. And then she was completely emaciated, but fixed in her devotion. So, such great examples. So, coming back, the demigods praised Maharaj Parikshit's actions and beat celestial drums. And Prabhupada, in his purport, he says that there is an invisible chain of complete cooperation between the Lord and the demigods and the devotee of the Lord on earth. Now, this is explained very nicely in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. In 3.10, Krishna said that in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them, saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." And then in the next verse, it is further explained that the demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. And the next one is another very interesting one, where it says that the demigods are in charge of various necessities of life, as appointed by the Supreme Personality. And being satisfied with the performance of yajna, they will supply all the necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief, sthena. And Prabhupada explains for that the demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So the demigods must be satisfied by performance of prescribed yajnas, etc. And in the Vedas, there are many different kinds of yajnas for different demigods. For Kali, there is something, so on. But ultimately, all of these are offered back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And only those who cannot understand what the Supreme Personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to each of these demigods is recommended. But otherwise, the Lord, is the beneficiary of all sacrifices. In fact, in chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 29, says that Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam kyatvamam shantim rachati. So if we take a look at the translation for that, a person in full Krishna consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this is called the peace formula. That to understand that Lord Krishna is the beneficiary, and he is the proprietor of all planets, all demigods. Isn't that liberating? So it's like, why be possessive about me and mine and all the efforts that we make of protecting my territory when everything actually belongs to Krishna? So Prabhupada has, in the purport, he has really simplified it for us when he says that the Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. So Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. And this understanding is the sense of Krishna consciousness. So one can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. So we understand that worshipping the Lord is the best method. And by worshipping the Lord, all the demigods are also satisfied. Keep hearing that watering the roots is the best process, right? By watering the roots, we can nourish the entire tree. It's not necessary to water everything. So it's not necessary to really worship every demigod separately or go through all whole separate processes. Now, it's not that only ISKCON says that. In Padma Puran, Shiva says that to Mother Parvati. He says that Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnur Aradhanam Param. So of all worships, the highest is the worship of Vishnu. Now, of course, we respect all demigods, but it is not necessary to worship demigods separately. Now, in the age of Kali, of course, Mahaprabhu has given us the easiest and the best process of yoga, which is the Hari Sankirtan. So, Prabhupada explains in the purport that the demigods who are devotees of the Lord, were so pleased with Parikshit's actions that they scattered flowers and beat the celestial drums. Now, this is a very rare celebration. So I was looking up at what other occasions, have the demigods done this? Because I think this question came up in a last week's class as well, as to when and how, what were some occasions where demigods have done something. So I found a few. One was when Vasudeva was born. At that time, the demigods from the heavenly kingdom sounded kettle drums. Therefore, Vasudeva provided the proper place for the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was also known as Anakadun. The second one was the passing of Bhishmadev. The third was when Dhruva Maharaj leaves the transcendental plane, stepping on the head of death personified. At that time too, drums and kettle drums resounded from the sky. The chief Gandharvas began to sing. Other demigods showered flowers like torrents of rain on Dhruva Maharaj. A fourth was when King Prithu and his wife Archi appeared from churning Devi's arms. And then when the Lord delivered Gajendra, all the demigods, sages and Gandharvas, headed by Brahma and Shiva, praised the activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another one was when Vamandev appeared. And then the final one that I have listed or found, and there may be others, but the final was in Canto 10, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who is situated in the core of everyone's heart, appeared from the heart of Devaki. That description, of course, is really mesmerizing. It says the Kinnaras and Gandharvas began to sing auspicious songs. The Siddhas and Charanas offered auspicious prayers. And the Vidyadharas, along with the Apsaras, began to dance in jubilation. The demigods and great saintly persons showered flowers in a joyous mood, and clouds gathered in the sky, very mildly thunder, making sounds like those of the ocean waves. So the demigods actually take a lot of pleasure when seeing someone go back to Godhead. So Maharaj Parikshit is in the company of all these great personalities. So Prabhupada says that the demigod is always pleased with a devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his adidaivic powers, he may help the devotees in all respects. So adidaivic powers, right? We hear of the adidaivic powers as one of the three prongs of the threefold miseries conditioned souls like us have to continuously go through, right? And so it's adidaivic powers are actually used to torment us to understand that this earth, the material world is Dukkhana Shashvata. So it's part of Adhyatmika, which is miseries pertaining to body and mind. Adibhautika, miseries caused by other living beings, bugs, roaches, bacteria, the pandemic. And then Adidaivik, which is natural calamities caused by the Devas. Now, Devas, however, use that same power in helping the devotees on earth, because the devotees are, the demigods are actually very impressed with the devotees on the earth planet because of the austerities that a true devotee of the Lord undergoes, either voluntarily or it could be under various circumstances. But true devotees don't shirk that responsibility. And in fact, we know that great devotees like Kunti Maharani actually pray that, that they be put in a difficult situation so that we take deeper shelter of the Lord. Now, the other instructive point about demigods in this verse is that demigods have luxurious living. So we know that in the upper planets, the standard of living is very luxurious, but none of them are atheists. So we, on the other hand, when things are comfortable, things are going well, I know that I become complacent. My japa at that time is distracted. And also from our own experience, as well as others that we talk to and others that we try to inspire to come into Krishna consciousness, we know that people either forget or don't acknowledge that this human life is such a great opportunity to make our way out of this material world. And so that's where the scriptures, come into play. So give us these great examples of demigods who are devotees serving the Lord in spite of being in such luxurious situations, and that we should be following footsteps of the demigods. Now, once again, of course, Mahaprabhu gives us a very easy way out, and he says that the Vairagya, we don't have to relinquish everything. We don't have to go to the forest or the banks of the Ganga and sit on the kusha grass, especially in this age of Kali. His message is very simple. Use everything you possess in the service of Krishna. Sthane sthita. You stay where you are in your role, but offer everything to Krishna. Yat karoshi, yat snashi. And that is sufficient renunciation for us. So the message, therefore, by our acharyas coming down from Mahaprabhu is very simple. Mold our lives in such a way that we don't forget Krishna in any circumstance. We don't have to go through severe austerities or anything. So, so that's about the demigods. Well, another thing, in addition to the demigods being in charge of supplying our needs, they are also the controlling deities of our senses. And we read about this in the Bhagavatam, Canto 2, as well as in Canto 3, during the creation of the universal form, etc. It talks about how the sun god is the controlling deity of our eyes, Indra of the hands, and so on. So the demigods have a very important, play a very important part, but they are serving the Lord. So that's kind of what this verse is about. But as I was contemplating on this verse, and since on this whole incident of Maharaj Parikshit, since I had the opportunity to present twice, I was thinking about what are some of the learnings, right, or takeaways from this whole experience of Maharaj Parikshit. So I had some thoughts which I will share with you. You may have some more, but I just thought it would be helpful for us, right? What learnings do we take? So the first was his response to his act of sin. So Maharaj Parikshit, once he realized that what he had done at Samik Rishi's ashram, was immediately repenting. He desired a heavy punishment so that he may be freed from the sinful action. So why is that? Now, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has said that unless one's sins are cleared, he cannot fix his mind on Krishna. In chapter 7:28, it said that Yesham Tvantagatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvanda Moha Nirmukta Bhajante Mam Dridavrat. So persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion. And those are the persons that can engage themselves in service, in my service, with determination. So Maharaj Parikshit was very happy with the punishment that he got, because with that, his sins will be abolished and he will be able to focus his mind on Krishna with determination. The second one that I thought of was accepting the Lord's will. So Parikshit Maharaj saw the hand of Krishna in everything. Now, once he learned about the curse, it's not like he wanted to reverse it. He did not blame the instrument. He did not want to take revenge or anything. His mood was that the Lord is my biggest well-wisher. And he understood that I was too attached to worldly affairs. I needed a calamity like this to detach myself. I mean, how many, that is so instructive for us, right? To be able to get to that stage where we see the hand of the Lord in it. And that's kind of like Narad Muni, when his mother was his only shelter dies. And he thinks that it's good for me because the Lord must have something very fortunate with him. And he starts traveling north towards the north. The third was humility and submission. So Maharaj Parikshit is the emperor of the world. And yet, after having given up his kingdom, his children, his son Janmejaya, and he goes to the bank of the rivers, humble clothing. The sages arrive, and he humbly bows down to them, saying that normally you consider royalty as refuse, like royalty like me as refuse, as trash, basically, to be rejected and left in a distant place. But please accept me as a surrendered soul. Please continue to sing the glories of the Lord. So there's no pride at all, right? And he's actually thinking that they haven't come to see me because of me, but because I'm in the family of the great Pandavas. So recently we had the Vrindavan, virtual Vrindavan Yatra, and there we learned about the humility of the 6 Goswamis. In spite of being such erudite scholars, they were actually constantly in the company of Radha and Krishna. Madan Mohan was ready to eat tasteless batis that Sanatan Goswami would make with flour that he got from Madhukari. Just make balls, throw them in the fire, and that's what he gave Madan Mohan to eat. But yet Madan Mohan was happy to be with him. And then Radharani came and herself gave the ingredients for making sweet rice for him. So along similar lines, Prabhupada tells in multiple places that pridelessness is a great quality of devotees, that our pride should not be associated with our temporary qualities like beauty, education, the ability to maybe sing well or whatever, but rather that our pride should be associated with our disciplic succession, and where by some fortune and mercy of Guru and Krishna we have gotten attached to. And then, of course, fearlessness. Parikshit Maharaj says, let the snake bird bite me right now. It's like his bags are always packed. Right? At any time, he's ready to go because he's in the shelter of the Lord. And in recent days, actually, Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's words come to mind. When he was being put on the ventilator last year, his response was Maribe Rakhibe Jo Ichha Tomar. So fearlessness and complete dependence on Krishna. That brings up the question for me: are my bags packed? We know death is going to come at any time. How can I get to that stage? I'll be there anytime. It's a long way, but that's something that we can aspire for and practice for. and then full immersion in Krishna consciousness. So he prays verse 16, which Saragrahi Mataji very nicely explained, that if I should take my birth again in the material world, that, he prays that I have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna and association with his devotees and friendly relations with all. So with those prayers, I will stop here. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I misspoke anything. If you have some other learnings or realizations, please share, and do please correct if I've said something that's out of line.
This is Vamsidhari Das. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada. I have a controversial question to ask you.
Prabhu, don't.
So when Parikshit Maharaj recognized that he made a mistake, why he has to curse himself? Why cannot, compassionate, in the sense like I got thirsty, so I lost myself. But instead, he said I deserve the punishment, like that. And how much it is, it can be applicable to the current souls, because most of the life is ended with so many mistakes. So my question is going in that direction.
Yes, Prabhu, I really don't have much knowledge or much breadth, but thoughts that are coming to me is that a devotee is always compassionate to others but difficult on themselves, and are more critical about themselves. And so he very nicely, he's taking everything that happens to him as the hand of Lord Krishna, and so he, first of all, one of the points that I was making is he understands that no matter what, he was in a situation, he was thirsty and whatever, but it was a sin that he committed, and he did want to get the impact, the reaction of the sin right in that life, so that it would not carry into his next lives and next generations. And so the devotee being more difficult upon themselves, and leaving everything on the Lord, their worshipable Lord. That seems to, I think that was the mood which he was.
So basically, they're connecting more to that Lord through that way.
Yes, Prabhu, that's what I would.
So if one has to follow it, so they have to make sure they're connecting to Krishna more.
Yes.
Instead of just cursing them and then,
in full
cursing them. Okay. Thank you, Mantra.
Thank you for joining from Europe.
Yeah, because I need to ask you something about the Gita Jayanti, so it is not easy to catch hold of you. So
sure, bro. After this. So we're 5 minutes over. Thank you so much for joining. Then we can end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhuvaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sai Gaur Premanand Hari.
Thank you so much, Mathaji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you for your service every day, Prabhu.